I do think that there are some important moments for Prince William and the Princess of Wales where we need to just acknowledge their win and dismiss any sort of competition or comparison.
Here's the twist. Just when you think the royal saga has finally reached its last episode, Meghan Markle somehow manages to reboot it like an unexpected Netflix revival. But this time, it's not about a headline-grabbing podcast, a tell-all book, or a perfectly staged speech. No, what's stirring the pot now is what she did, and it's got both eyebrows raised and royal courtiers whispering all over again. This isn't some wild conspiracy theory, it's about those lingering hugs, the awkward glances, in a house that apparently wasn't quite grand enough for a duchess.
You know, you have seen how frustrated I have been with time and their pandering to the Markle family, the Markles, as we call them. Time, including Meghan in their Time 100 summit to gloat about.
Let's dive into what's really got royal insiders on edge, Meghan's unusual pattern of behavior around Prince William. And to be clear, this isn't about an innocent pat on the back or a casual handshake in passing. Reports claim she was noticeably clingy. Every single time she crossed paths with William, it wasn't just a quick, polite hello, it was a full-on hug session. The kind of embrace that makes everyone in the room exchange side glances and hold their breath. And yes, William noticed. In fact, sources say he was more than a little uncomfortable.
I'd say more like 6 months ago, it was still American Riviera Orchard. For Time to include Meghan in that summit was such a shameless PR stunt on their end, as well as Blake Lively. And so, yes, I love that Prince William and Catherine are featured in this new.
It wasn't that William disliked her. It was the optics. Palace staff reportedly felt Meghan was crossing lines, and it didn't take long before whispers of the F-word flirting began circulating. Think about it. You're the future king, married, under constant public scrutiny, and every time you're in the same room with your brother's wife, she's draping you in hugs and affection. That's not just awkward, that's a headline waiting to explode. William understandably was worried about how it looked, and really, who wouldn't be? What made it worse was that Meghan didn't ease up even after being told to tone it down. She just kept going, hug after hug, smile after smile. It almost seemed like she was trying to make a statement, or even more unsettling, like she knew exactly the effect she was having. That energy only deepened the growing rift between Harry and William.
Catherine and William, the Prince and Princess of Wales, have made the Time 100 philanthropists list. Yet Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, despite trying to endlessly portray themselves as doing some sort of good for society, have not made the list in the slightest. I doubt there was even much consideration.
The tension already simmering beneath the surface suddenly gained another layer. Meghan felt snubbed. William felt trapped. And Harry, he seemed to stand firmly by her side, even if deep down, he may have sensed something wasn't quite right. But that wasn't the only spark feeding this royal wildfire. Meghan's attitude toward their home, yes, the literal house, added even more fuel. When she first moved in with Harry at Nottingham Cottage, she hated it. To most people, it looked like a fairy tale retreat tucked inside palace grounds. But to Meghan, it felt like an insult. Too small, too plain, far beneath what she believed Harry deserved. Never mind that William, who's taller than Harry, had lived there before without a single complaint. Meghan reportedly griped that the ceilings were too low and the house itself was belittling. She's said to have believed the very size of the place was a pointed message from the royal family, a passive-aggressive signal that Harry simply didn't matter.
Are the butt of the jokes. They are not the people actually the world goes to find solutions to problems. They're people who the world is hoping desperately sort of goes away and accepts their level of achievement is basically being glorified influencers. That's Meghan Markle's love.
And Meghan wasn't exactly quiet about it. In both the Netflix series and behind closed doors, she made her feelings crystal clear. Even when Oprah came over for tea, Meghan allegedly told her the cottage was so modest that Oprah herself couldn't believe it. But here's the reality. That same house had already been home to royals before her. Harry never seemed to mind it until Meghan arrived and recast it as a symbol of disrespect. She didn't want Nottingham Cottage, she wanted Frogmore House. And when she was given Frogmore Cottage instead, that still wasn't enough. What she really wanted was Windsor Castle. When the Queen said no, explaining that Windsor Castle was strictly reserved for the monarch, Meghan allegedly took it as yet another personal slight. At that point, it wasn't just about walls and ceilings, it was about status and standing.
Proves that part of the reason Harry and Meghan, you could say, have succeeded somewhat in the United States is a basic lack of understanding of the British monarchy. And this little tidbit in the synopsis of Catherine and William, I want to highlight because it's so potentially dangerous to the future of the United Kingdom.
It was about ego, status, and a burning belief that the royal family was deliberately keeping her in check. Every piece of it, the touchiness, the house drama, the quiet resentment, set the tone for what came next. This was never just a fairy tale, it was a battle over perception. And Meghan, she was done playing by royal rules. What truly started raising eyebrows was how she approached royal traditions, not simply ignoring them, but almost daring to challenge them as if she were rewriting the centuries-old playbook. For those raised in the institution, subtlety is everything. Appearances matter. But Meghan arrived with California boldness, expecting hugs, deep heart-to-hearts, and maybe a few red carpet moments sprinkled in. That might work in Hollywood, but Buckingham Palace is not a movie set, and the people inside it don't take kindly to unscripted plot twists.
Sister Beatrice made an appearance, although Eugenie was much more public, and Beatrice, we just saw her back in pictures with Eugenie, so I thought that was maybe a smidge odd. And we got this huge, wonderful piece of Princess Eugenie talking about her scoliosis.
The royal family is a centuries-old institution, bound by rules, silent codes, and an unshakable fear of public embarrassment. Meghan didn't just brush up against royal protocol, she bulldozed straight through it. One of the most awkward examples? Her inability to hold back physical affection, even in the most formal of settings. This wasn't just an American trait, it was a Meghan trademark. She was constantly pushing to normalize casual intimacy in a world that runs on controlled distance. And while some tried to excuse it as cultural differences, William was far from amused. Every cheek kiss, every lingering hug, every overly warm gesture created a quiet tension everyone could feel, even if no one dared to say it out loud. And then there was the money. Harry and Meghan dreamed of building a billionaire lifestyle, but the income simply wasn't keeping pace with the image they wanted to project.
Catherine and William hosting a garden party at Buckingham Palace. So in addition with them was Princess Eugenie, Zara Tindall, the Gloucesters, and the Edinburghs. So I thought that was great that once again we get a bit of a cousin garden party. I hope maybe we have
streaming deals, podcast dreams, splashy content partnerships. They all started with hype but fizzled just as fast. Spotify, Netflix, even Hollywood producers, most backed away quietly. The official line was creative differences, but insiders tell a different story. Meghan and Harry were simply too difficult to work with. Behind closed doors, teams described them as demanding, overly sensitive, and painfully slow to deliver. So how are they really funding this luxury lifestyle? The answer, they're not, at least not in a sustainable way. Harry has already burned through much of the inheritance left by Princess Diana. Yes, he recently tapped into a $16 million trust from the Queen Mother, but when you stack that against their expenses, nearly $715,000 a year in mortgage payments, around $370,000 in staff costs, and a staggering $5 million annually for security, even a royal trust fund starts to feel like pocket change disappearing fast.
And that again, Catherine was in all rewears. We've seen a ton of rewears from her this year. And I feel like there's an interesting story there to explore. So maybe we will get to it on our fashion channel, Royal Fashion News. If you guys want to go ahead and check that out, you can do that as well. So on to this list.
Add to that Harry's mounting legal battles, some already lost with attorney fees climbing into the millions, and the picture gets even darker. People aren't just asking if the Sussexes are running low. They're wondering how long until they slam into financial rock bottom. The scariest part? There's no major paycheck in sight, no confirmed deals, no next big project, just a high-burn lifestyle with no clear plan to sustain it. That's why whispers of a possible return to the royal fold have been gaining traction. Many see it as their only way out, a chance to claw back some status and secure financial support. But here's the snag. the royal family isn't exactly standing at the gates with open arms, ready to welcome them back.
Seriously when it comes to their philanthropy. I put that in quotation marks because what I see with them is a total level of sort of ridiculous hubris when it comes to their foundation. So let's look and see what Archwell Foundation is like doing right.
Harry's recent move to share his working calendar with the royal family, supposedly to avoid scheduling conflicts, came across less like diplomacy and more like a desperate Hail Mary. And then there's Meghan's reputation behind palace walls, a reputation that still lingers. Staff who worked under her haven't forgotten. There's even a nickname for them, the Sussex Survivor Club. These are former employees who allegedly endured emotional distress while working for her, with some claiming they felt psychologically fragile afterward. Many feared retaliation if they ever spoke out. According to royal journalist Valentine Lowe, certain staff members were so shaken that even after leaving, they remained afraid of what Meghan might do if they broke their silence. That is not the kind of legacy you want trailing behind you when you're trying to rebuild a brand.
Taken over by another in their own country, which is crazy to think about. These are conversations that have been happening for a long time throughout Europe, but they are starting to hit more and more, I think, of the mainstream in some ways. And I know some people were like, well, it's good to have him.
While Meghan's team may publicly dismiss these accounts as recycled gossip, the people who say they lived through it aren't laughing. They're still carrying the weight of their experiences. Meghan's defenders love to claim the press was out to get her from the very beginning, that she was unfairly targeted, misunderstood, and never truly welcomed. But here's the truth. When Meghan first arrived, she had the UK in the palm of her hand. The crowds adored her. The headlines were glowing. There was genuine excitement in the air. A biracial American actress marrying into the British monarchy? It felt fresh. It felt modern. It felt like a hopeful new chapter. People were rooting for her. And then it began to unravel. Not in one big scandal, but slowly, death by 1,000 paper cuts. An odd interview here, a passive-aggressive comment there, complaints from staff, whispers of diva-like behavior. One by one, the incidents piled up, the narrative shifted, and the same public that once cheered her on began questioning everything. Was Meghan truly treated unfairly, or was she simply playing the victim card whenever things didn't go her way? For longtime royal watchers, what stung the most wasn't the list of complaints, it was the entitlement dripping from them. Meghan wasn't just uncomfortable, she was outraged. Outraged that the palace didn't hand her the spotlight she believed she deserved. Outraged that her title didn't instantly come with global influence. Outraged that centuries-old rules refused to bend for her. And instead of adapting, she pushed back hard. Then came the Frogmore story, which really soured public opinion. After rejecting Nottingham Cottage and being denied Windsor Castle, Meghan was offered Frogmore Cottage, not the sprawling Frogmore house she'd envisioned, but still a perfectly respectable royal residence. Yet still she complained again. The ceilings were too low, the rooms were too small, and according to her, the atmosphere simply wasn't grand enough for a duchess. All the while, Meghan was living on a private estate most people could only dream of. But to her, it wasn't a blessing, it was an insult. And that relentless dissatisfaction, it began to wear thin. Not even Oprah could spin it into something flattering. Her infamous remark about the size of their home, claiming Oprah herself was shocked by it, struck many as tone-deaf, especially when so many were struggling just to make ends meet. Meghan seemed determined to play the underdog, even while living in undeniable luxury. And the most troubling part? Harry followed her lead. A prince who once laughed off the weight of tradition was suddenly complaining about curtain colors and ceiling heights. But this was never really about houses, hugs, or headlines. It was about control. Meghan wanted total command over the narrative, and when she couldn't get it, she lashed out. The media was cruel, the royals were cold, the staff were disloyal. Everyone, it seemed, was against her, except her. And now, with bridges burned and options dwindling, that once blazing spotlight is beginning to dim. The media frenzy around Meghan isn't what it used to be, and the same platforms that once celebrated her are quietly moving on. Meghan and Harry's big-ticket content deals are drying up, their influence shrinking. Even the most loyal supporters are beginning to ask the uncomfortable questions. Where's the work? Where's the substance? The reality is hard to ignore. Meghan had everything: a loving husband, a global platform, the goodwill of an entire nation. She could have built something lasting, but instead, she leaned into conflict, drama, and a constant narrative of victimhood. Now, years later, the palace gates are shut, the media's bored, and the fairy tale has crumbled into a PR disaster. Whatever the future holds for Meghan Markle, one fact stands out. She didn't just walk away from the royal family, she torched the entire bridge on her way out. And when the smoke clears, she may find that no one's in a hurry to build her another one.